Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another interview with plant-based cyclists. Today, we bring you uh, Mr. Wes Bates. Imagine you are on vacation in Hawaii as a young teen, and you're so depressed that you contemplate jumping into a volcano and committing suicide. That's where my next guest found himself early on in life, using comfort as food. I'm sorry, using food as comfort. He battled disordered eating and depression for years, rode on the weight roller coaster many times, gaining and losing weight as he grew up. Reaching his tipping point, he finally said enough is enough and never looked back on his years of self-abuse. So currently a student at Indiana University, I welcome Wes Bates. Hello, Wes.
Hello, Ian.
Hey, how was that intro? Was that too dramatic?
No, you obviously read what I sent to you, so that's good because not every I've sent that to a handful of people, and not everybody has read the whole thing, and I've put a good bit into that, so it's good to see that people actually read it.
Yeah, now is that, you told me in the email that that was the start of a book you hope to publish?
Yeah, yeah, I said that. So last year, I found myself a lot of free time at school, and I kind of started working on two books, a cookbook and a book just kind of about my life journey.
Okay.
Um, what I think I'm going to end up doing is publish one book or work towards publishing one book where it's kind of telling my life story through food. So putting recipes in there from when I weighed almost 300 pounds, things that I cooked then, to how I eat now,
Yeah.
telling my story through that. And I thought it'd be kind of an amusing way to tell my story because, uh, there are people that will find value in the recipes I used to eat, or, used to make. Like people will like. I'm not endorsing that, but people still use those. And I have a lot of friends that still ask me for recipes of things I make. So I thought it'd be fun to kind of put it all together and show the transition of how I used to eat to coming to like how I eat now.
Yeah, yeah, I think that would be interesting. I can't say that I have ever heard of that type of book where you basically, it's almost like an autobiography focused around food and how the food shaped your life. So that would be interesting.
Right. Yeah, and how it makes you feel and how
Yeah,
the relationships you have with it.
yeah. Just out of curiosity, what's your major at Indiana?
It's business management.
And what do you hope to do with that eventually?
Uh, That's a good question. Uh, my plan is to work with entrepreneurs, hopefully in the health food industry. There are a lot of great entrepreneurs that have products, and mainly they're athletes that create like a granola bar, for example, or some other health food product, but they don't have the business skills
Hmm.
to bring it to the market.
Yeah,
So I'd love to work with athletes and kind of young entrepreneurs working to grow their businesses, and getting real food and real products that can be beneficial to people to the market because there are hundreds and thousands of products out there, but there's no way to know which one you need.
right.
So I
Uh,
think I'll help a lot of people.
yeah, so while I'm thinking about it, I know how many more years of school you have left?
I have three more semesters.
Okay. So
So
for someone who may be watching this, who maybe has an idea for a nutritional product, how can they get a hold of you?
they can reach me by email. My email is Bates, BATES, WT at gmail.com.
Okay.
That's going to be the best way to reach me.
And
But yeah,
I'll
if anybody sees this and has an idea of a product that I might be interested in, feel free to reach out to me because I've so much free time and I'd love to get involved with new things and have something new to talk about.
yeah, and I'll for sure put that email address in the description, and kind of get your name out there. So I have I have some questions here that we can go wherever your answers take us. But if we need to bring it back to the road here, we can always turn back to these questions. So I mentioned in the introduction that you used food. Uh, we'll say early life, middle school, and even through high school, as comfort. Can you can you point us to any factors early on in life that led you to treat uh, food as more of comfort?
Um, that that's a really good question. I grew up playing football, so I started playing football in, I want to say, second grade, and in second grade, I guess I was one of the bigger kids, but I was never like the biggest. I remember comparing myself to other kids. But then like that kind of gave me an excuse to like go eat. Oh, I played a hard football game. We're gonna go eat, and it was kind of like one of those things where it was like a reward for myself that I get to eat something, or um, and I like, and football was one of those things where I I remember having fun doing it, but I remember so many times where I was like, this is just miserable, and I hated going to practice. Like, I couldn't run that well. Um, so it was just like so it came back to food where it was like, okay, I'm done, I'm gonna go eat. And then like there were all these experiences that were like linked to food, and it was like, I remember when I was in like third grade probably, I loved going to um, this roller rink, or it was like roller rink and bowling. And I loved going because we'd always get Hershey's cookies and cream bars. And that was the only place I ever got those. And it was like, that's one of the reasons I like to go roller skating, was because I got, combos, like little pizza roll things, and Hershey's and cookies and cream Hershey's. So like there were a lot of experiences where like I did things because I knew like there was like a food reward. And then there were times where it was like I more towards like middle school and early high school, where like the food just became like like a crutch, and it was like, oh, I'm doing this, I'm just gonna go eat this because I'm gonna feel so much better after eating this, and this like satisfies me. And it was just kind of like, digging myself into a hole.
Yeah.
I don't know if that answers your question, but it's
Yeah, no, it does. It does. And while we're on that topic, can you, I guess this is going to be more like a chicken or the egg question, is did you become depressed because you were eating so much, or were you eating so much because you were depressed?
the, yeah, and I think, and that could be something outside of food too.
Yeah,
That could be more relationship based, and I think that comes from the depression came from that. Okay, I got to this point in my life where I was, really, really fat, and I didn't know how to handle relationships because people were targeting me. I felt like, and maybe they were, but in middle school, everybody's mean to each other. Like,
sure.
everybody gets picked on, but to me, I thought it was, always just me, and I was always the target. And I think that's what really got to me.
Yeah,
And I'm sure it would have been a different situation if I was skinny per se, but I also didn't handle it that well because I was under the impression that I was the target and that everybody was out to get me.
yeah,
And I think that put me in a really bad spot. And then moving forward from there, you don't build strong relationships. You're constantly breaking these relationships down. You think that people are always against you no matter what, even when they could be trying to help you. And that just put me in a really bad spot, feeling isolated and just kind of depressed, I guess.
yeah, yeah. So what it sounds like to me is you it's hard for you to point to one specific factor that led to your depression, that led to you eating so much. It was sort of a mix of everything, or a mix of both.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely think it was a mix. I mean, I grew up in the Midwest, Michigan specifically, and I mean that's another factor right there. Like that moving to Colorado was obviously a change that didn't really help me. But growing up, kind of around a culture of casseroles, and every Thanksgiving and Christmas, it's we're not going to eat green beans, but we're going to eat green bean casserole. We're
Right.
not gonna just eat corn. We're going to eat corn casserole.
Right.
All of those things. I mean, that's something that I've definitely kind of played into it. And just the I don't know. I think our culture definitely plays into it too, and the how easy it is to access high calorie, low nutrient food.
Yeah.
Um, so I mean, there are just all these things that I can kind of see that pushed me that way, but I can't put my finger on one specific thing.
Yeah. Well, I know it's advocates like you and me who hopefully slowly but surely are going to kind of open people's eyes and say, "Hey guys, it's the food, it's not genetics, it's exercise plays a small role in when you're talking about weight loss and maintaining weight. And really it's the food.
Exactly.
It's the food."
Yeah, exactly, and especially being in college, I see that every day, and it's like it's just what you're putting into your body. It's not. It doesn't have anything. I mean, exercise plays into it, and getting a very minimal amount of exercise every day
Yeah.
is necessary. But the food is just so big because I know. I, I mean that's a whole nother discussion.
Right. Yeah.
But
And we might get into that a little bit later here, but just tell us briefly about. I found it interesting reading your memoir about you were picked on, you were bullied for various reasons, and tell us how you sometimes, or you tell us how many times you dealt with how'd you deal with the bullying.
uh, the bullying I definitely didn't deal with well. There's a good example. I guess that was probably eighth grade, where I remember we were out playing basketball at recess during lunch, and we're out there, and kids are like jumping on my back, and I'm like, dude, get off my back. You're fouling me. Like, you're not doing that to anybody else. Like, because I'm bigger. This kid's kind of jumping on me, and like that's unnecessary. I mean, we're playing basketball at recess. I ended up like punching the kid in the face and getting suspended from school. And I mean, a lot of my friends probably still remember that, and that's probably one of my defining moments from middle school. Um, a lot, a lot of violence. I remember uh, walking home in seventh or eighth grade. Uh, for some reason, the kid across the street from me was ticking me off, and I was like, dude, just walk home on the other side of the street. Like, just stop walking by me or whatever. And he's just like picking at it and just keeps going. I remember throwing rocks at him. And it's like,
Hmm.
looking back now, it's so ridiculous that I would ever, come to that.
Hmm.
But, those experiences and, that's what it led to. And I mean, it's no excuse for my actions, but
Yeah. Yeah.
that's just how I dealt with them.
If you can maybe describe a little bit more about, you commented also about a couple mental breakdowns. Can you touch on those a little bit and describe what those were and what led to those mental breakdowns?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Can you reference where?
Well, I think there was one where you described it was after playing golf or during a golf match,
Yeah,
your high
yeah,
school, where
yeah,
there was one mental breakdown.
yeah. I remember exactly where I was. I so I played golf all through high school. Well, not I didn't play my senior year, but I remember my junior year of high school. It was the probably September, and the coaching staff at my school was probably one of the least supportive groups of people I've ever been around, especially like the head coach. And I remember my sophomore year I played in the state golf tournament, and I remember uh, going to the practice round, which happened to be on my 16th birthday. I go out to the golf course, and I was the only one. I was playing by myself that day, so the head coach didn't even show up to walk the practice round with me to talk about like strategy or anything like that. Um, and so that left a really bad taste in my mouth. And then coming to the tournament, which was only 15 minutes from our school, so it wouldn't have been hard for him to come watch the tournament. I remember the one day he didn't even come watch and just like graded papers when he was there. So at the end of my sophomore year for golf, just left a terrible taste in my mouth. So getting into junior year, I was already kind of like agitated. Um, and I came in, and the coaching staff was kind of the same way. Just like I would question kind of some of their things because I was doing the same drills as kids who couldn't break 100. So me and the other more skilled players, we would want to do our own drills, but we were limited by the coaching staff. So, I remember going to one of these tournaments and playing really poorly. I was kind of in a playing slump, playing really poorly, and just talking to the coaches and saying, look, I really don't want to be here dealing with you guys. Like, I am tired of, coming out here grinding every week, doing everything I need to do, and then you guys aren't supporting me. And that was after I had lost all this weight. So I was in a better place physically, but kind of mentally I was still just really agitated. And I just remember breaking down. I'm like, I really don't want to be here right now. I'd much rather be in school rather than missing all the schoolwork to come out here and deal with everybody. That's definitely one of the times that I can recall. And I'm sure there are other times that, I could sit here and think about. But there are a lot of times in my life where I sat there and I'm like, why am I doing this? Why am I here right now? This shouldn't be this way.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. I mean, yeah, you kind of mentioned it, but it just sounds like if you would have just had more support and be challenged, I guess, more from your coaches, that would have been an easy way to not solve your depression woes, but I guess help mitigate them. What can you tell us? What was your turning point? Where, I guess, what was your turning point in your life? Would you say?
Yeah. So okay, there are two distinct moments that I bring people back to when I get asked this question a lot. So the first one would be I was. And I'm getting the chills right now because I always get the chills when I tell the story.
Yeah.
I was sitting in my sophomore year marketing class in high school. I remember the exact seat I'm sitting in the kind of the back corner of the classroom. And I'm sitting there and we're trying on these beanies. Like we're doing a special custom order of beanies for this club. I put on the hat and I just remember looking at my phone, kind of looking at my reflection in the screen of the phone and saying like, holy shit, like what has my life come to right now?
Yeah.
And being like, I need to make a change. Like, I see like, I hadn't shaved in a handful of days and like I had a double chin. And I'm like, this is just kind of gross. I need to make a change.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other moment was right around that same time. I don't know if this was before or after. I'd have to think of the timeline. I was getting my driver's license, and I was going to the DMV, and I was with my buddy and my mom. And I remember getting my license, and they ask you your weight for your license, and everybody lies about their weight. Like that's a fact.
Mm-hmm.
I put 250 pounds, and that was my lie. And to this day, I still have the same driver's license, and it says 250 pounds. But I knew that I was like, that's pretty messed up. That I have, I'm lying about my weight, and I'm still saying 250 pounds.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So
those are the two moments.
So from that day on, I mean, just summarize some of the things I guess you changed, and give us some highlights. I mean, I know you did some triathlons and you got into cycling. Was there anything else between that point? Go ahead.
So the big thing really that got me to lose all that weight, or the start, was I started playing squash. Like a lot of people don't even know what squash is. It's a racket sport played indoors. I would go to the gym 2, 3, 4 hours a night and just go play squash and hang out and just play pickup games.
Mm-hmm.
And I got really into it, and I was a decent squash player. And then from there, it just kind of transitioned into other things. And I'd been playing lacrosse, and it led into lacrosse in the winter. And I remember there were times where I'd finish a lacrosse game indoors, and then I'd go right to the squash court, play squash. There were times where I would leave school during like an off period. I'd go to the gym for a squash match and come back to school. It was just adding all this physical activity in. And then as time progressed, the diet component really came into play. But I mean, at first, like there's a Red Robin burger place right by the gym I go to, and I still go to the same gym. Um, but I'd go to Red Robin and I'd eat French fries after working out because I didn't really know any better.
Hmm.
I figured, I need to start doing things and being active, so I started that. Um, and then, so that would have been, winter coming into spring, and then in the spring I was playing lacrosse, so I was going to practice every day. I was getting that physical activity in, and then uh, when it came summer, I was just playing a lot of golf, carrying my clubs, and at that point, I was really watching what I was eating. I was caddying out of the golf course, so staying extremely active. But there's this progression, as we kind of talked about already, of how my diet changed. And at first, it was, I'd be eating this junk at Red Robin after workouts or wherever, and then I kept the physical activity the same, but changed the diet component or let the diet progress, and that is where the transformation really happened.
Yeah.
Uh,
That sounds like it definitely would make a huge, huge impact. And tell us about your. It sounds like you're basically all self-taught on your nutrition. Did your research.
yeah. So um, I I worked with uh, my buddy Dave Taylor. He's at the gym I go to, and I mean we're still friends to this day. He I worked with him on and off, like when I was fat, and I work with him now on some personal training sort of stuff. But he gives me pointers or give me some pointers on nutrition, and then his friend Abby would kind of give me some things. And I remember meeting with the dietitian when I was younger in middle school, and just it never clicked.
Hmm.
But then when I started being active, I started doing all this research on my own, figuring out like what I needed. Um, I used apps on my phone. Like there were so the, another part of the story is that my I come from an overweight family, and we would go out to dinner all of the time. So even when I was losing all this weight, I was never cooking at home.
Hmm.
I mean, there were days where I was going out to eat 2 meals a day, but I had these apps on my phone that had all of the nutritional facts for like any restaurant you can imagine. So before we'd go out to dinner, I would look on the app, make sure there's something that I could go eat, like a salad or something, and then I'd get to the restaurant. I know exactly what I was ordering because I'd already done the research on what I needed, and that played into it a lot. And like during school, I'd go out to lunch, and it was the same thing. I knew exactly how many calories were in each dish I ate, even when I was going out to eat. It was never like, um, oh, I'm gonna go cook all my own meals or do this. I was like, still going out to eat, still making healthy
Yeah.
choices.
So give us an idea of, you mentioned French fries, fast food. Give us a little. Basically, was that most of what you ate pre, the turning moment? And then give us an idea of how your diet's changed, and basically, what are some of your staples right now?
Okay, so um, I remember like my sophomore year. So my sophomore year is when I started losing all the weight. And that's when I got. So I guess I got my license, and then maybe a month later or something, I started losing all the weight. So there were times where I'd drive like 15 or 20 minutes to this place called Dickie's Barbecue, and I go pick up barbecue for my friends and I.
Hmm.
You just get like mashed potatoes, mac and cheese, like ribs, pork, sausage, all that, and then you get a root beer float to go with it.
Hmm.
So that'd be like lunch during school. And then I had a friend Ben, a sophomore year. We had a Chick-fil-A about a mile from our school. Every other day, we would walk to Chick-fil-A and get Chick-fil-A.
Hmm.
I remember there were times where I would justify getting two sandwiches because I wasn't getting French fries. I'd say, well, because I'm not getting French fries, I can get a second sandwich. So I'd sit there and eat two Chick-fil-A sandwiches and then walk back to school. And then I wasn't really active. I'd go to golf practice or whatever, but that was just hitting balls or chipping. So it wasn't like I was really that active. So I think that kind of gives you a good idea.
Yeah.
Um, but then going to my diet now, for over 6 months now, I've been completely vegan, which, I mean, I'll eat honey, and I mean that's the only thing that some people would question.
Sure.
Um, but a lot of my staples would be, I mean, I love hummus. I make my own hummus. I do a lot of hummus. Started making baba ganoush,
Mm.
and then I don't make my own Indian food, but like Indian, Middle Eastern, Mediterranean, those are kind of my staples.
Mm.
And then I do a lot of like toast with avocado,
Mm.
oatmeal, just very simple things because I find that I'm very satisfied with just like real food and how simple it can be. And like, I was listening to the Rich Roll podcast last week, and he was talking about how like he could eat beans and rice for dinner
Yeah.
every night.
I think
And I mean I could do the same thing, like
Yeah.
some variation of that every night.
I think I was listening. I've my just long story short, my commute to work has gone from a 5-minute walk to a 45-minute drive. So I have to fill that time with something, and so I don't pull my hair out. One of the things I'm getting into is podcasts. I've listened to a lot of Rich Roll podcasts. I listened to the same one. I forget who he was talking to, but and I'm also yeah. So it's one thing that people want to brush away a plant-based lifestyle or a vegan lifestyle, saying with all these excuses, and one of their excuses is it takes too much time, it's too much prep work. Well, yeah, it's a little bit more prep work than rolling through a fast food joint, a drive-through. But
Yeah,
man,
but
but
I think it's less prep work than if you're going to cook every other meal.
yeah,
Like, I mean, I'm not cooking meat every night. Like, meat takes time to cook. I use a pressure cooker to cook just about everything. Or like, I can cook quinoa in 7 minutes. It takes me to go from a dried chickpea to hummus in about 30 minutes. Like, that's not. I don't think that's a lot of time. I can put something in the pressure cooker and then go for a run or go do my stretching every day. Like, there are other things I could fill that time with, and I just don't think people like to make excuses.
yeah.
So
And just to touch on your story of how you and your buddies used to always go to Chick-fil-A's and these fast food joints that were close to your school. I just think that your story is not that it's commonplace. There's so much access to this junk food around that I guess when you said like I didn't know any better, and there was so much access to it. There's so much uneducated people, so many uneducated people out there that don't know any better. They have all this access to all this rich Western diet food that it's no wonder why 40% of us are obese in this country.
yeah,
So
and I think that's one of the reasons why I always kind of go back to the Middle Eastern food or Indian or Southeast Asian because it just feels a lot cleaner to
yeah,
me. It just doesn't feel like garbage.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so I mean, it just makes me feel a lot better when I eat it.
absolutely. No, absolutely. I completely 100% agree. Let's see. Tell us a little bit. I was curious to read about you had an accident close to Christmas, a rock climbing accident, and
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, it shaped your life at that point in time. Has it really like shaped your life? Tell us a little about the accident and how has it shaped your life?
Yeah. Okay. That's a really good point. So, basically, I I came into my junior year, which would have of high school, which would have been August of 2011, and by August I had lost all the weight. So I had lost 120 pounds by August of 2011,
And so just
and
add in there. So you were how much before, and then in August of 2011 you were how much? Give us an idea.
so the heaviest I ever recall being was 294
Hmm.
pounds. And I got that tattooed on my arm about 6 7 months ago, just as a reminder.
Yeah.
But that's the heaviest I ever remember being. And then I got down to about 173, 174, and I stayed there for quite a while. Um, so I got down to by August of 2011. So I come back to my junior year. I remember going to registration or whatever, and people saying like, "Wow, like didn't even recognize me," and just amazed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I continued to stay active, and then I started picking up rock climbing, just in that November or something. Started picking up rock climbing just indoors at the gym. The gym I've always continued to go to. And I remember my brother and I had a friend. She convinced us we should get belay certified so we could, go belay each other. My brother was 13 at the time. Him and I went and got belay certified. And that same night, they let us climb. And I was about 15 feet up. And I told my brother, I said, "Hey, I'm coming down." So I let go of the wall, and the rope just went right through his hand. So I fell right on my feet and had a compression fracture in the L1 vertebrae. Uh, that put me in a back brace for 2 months, and then I had another couple months of physical therapy. But how it shaped my life now is interesting because I hadn't in the last 2 years. Um, I had run about just a handful of times. I hadn't run much since after my senior year of high school, and we went to the Dominican Republic like August 1st, and I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna run just to kind of stay active when I'm down here." After 2 days of running, my back was killing me, like right where I broke it. Um, and there were days where I could barely walk. I mean, I laid in bed for most of the day because I couldn't move, and that was mostly my fault because I hadn't been doing my core work. I had just kind of neglected my back, hadn't really taken care of it, didn't do all my stretching like I had supposed to be, and this was over the course of a year or two where I just hadn't been doing what I was supposed to be
Mm-hmm.
doing. But that's part of it. I mean, every day I need to be doing core work. I need to be making sure my core is strong, so it takes pressure off my back. And there are certain things that'll irritate my back, but it's just something I have to deal with. But my friend, he broke his neck about a dozen years ago, and we're in the same place where it's like we were both so close to having an injury that could have been a lot worse. Where now we're so grateful for everything that we are able to do. So I try not to take anything for granted.
Mm-hmm.
For example, I was backpacking a couple weeks ago, and my back was bothering me a little bit, but it's like it's bothering me, but there are people in a lot worse shape than I am that they have injuries, they have conditions where they could never be doing what I'm doing right now. So it's hard for me to really complain.
Yeah.
Uh, but there's that balance of not wanting to complain and then taking care of myself.
Right.
And I just need to find that
Yeah.
balance.
I think it takes a lot of maturity to look introspectively and say that there are a lot of other people out there who have it worse than I do. So I think that's a great mantra that more people, young and old, should carry out with them for the rest of their lives. Tell us how you got into triathlons and cycling.
So so yeah, that just kind of continues that last story. So um, I had basically just finished physical therapy when uh, spring break rolled around my junior year, and we were in Mexico, and I had been running. I basically ran every day when I was down there, only 2 or 3 miles. That was about the most I could do. Ran every day. So this is spring break junior year. And then my brother and sister brought up, "Oh, we're gonna do a triathlon in June. We're gonna do this one Friday night. We're gonna go do it. You should go do it with us." And at that point, I wasn't prepared at all. I mean, I physically I wasn't. I just could, my back was still recovering. I never really swam. I had never biked before, like any serious biking. Um, so I got back, and I've been starting some training with my buddy Dave again. And I said, "Hey Dave, I wanna start doing triathlon. I want to get into this. Let's create a training plan."
Mm-hmm.
So him and I created a training plan together, and so I want to say the end of June 2012 is when I did my first sprint triathlon, And then from there, it just kind of continued. And then I probably did about 7 or 8 races that summer between sprint and Olympic distance. And then that gave my senior year a lot of focus. I focused a lot on my training my senior year. And then coming into that summer, uh, before I graduated high school, and then by the end of that summer, I had done an Ironman 70.3.
Mm.
So that's kind of where that left off. Right before coming to college, I committed 2 summers to doing triathlon, and that's where I got into cycling. Um, but I really the triathlon was great because it gave my life a lot of, like I said, a lot of focus where I had something to work on, and it really taught me to push and kind of dedicate myself to something. And I think that is what kind of taught me to be an athlete, not just an active
Mm.
person. And from that point, I've always been, well, I want to do the next big thing, and I want to do something else, and just kind of working up to that point, rather than where when I was just losing the weight and playing squash and playing lacrosse, I was content doing what I was doing. But now, like, I always just want to find the next
Yeah.
challenge.
What you said you did your 70.3 during the summer. When was summer of what?
Summer of 2013. So I graduated high school in 2013. I ran the Colfax Marathon. I want to say like May 23rd or 24th, and then something like June 30th is when I did. It was like Lubbock, Texas, Buffalo Springs Lake
Yeah.
in West
It
Texas.
sounds, even though I'm a few years older than you are, it's funny that my first triathlon I ever did was, so yours was June 2012 for your first sprint. Mine was September 2012, and
Okay.
then I set a goal with a buddy. Actually, the first interview I ever did on this channel with Derek DeMass, we set a goal of, we did 70.3 Syracuse, New York,
Okay.
during the summer, during June of 2013. So I just think that's interesting how that parallels us.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah. Um, Tell us about. I think this is getting into a little bit more of what I'm interested in everything. I'm interested in talking to people about exercise and diet, but what I'm especially interested in is your cross country bike trip to raise money for, and you can give
Hmm.
us details on that. And then I'm also interested in talking about your experience with the race across America. So tell us first about the cross country bike trip.
Yeah. So those two things actually link together really well. So this is another one of those where I just got the chills again because it's kind of a crazy story. So where was I? I was in my dorm room, uh, my freshman year of college. It would have been February or March, and there's this Facebook group called like Online Swap Meet where you can buy and sell bike parts. So my buddy now, Michael, he he posts in there and says, "Hey, does anybody want to ride across the country with me?" And it's like he posted in there, and like immediately I'm like, yes, I want to do this, and I'm contacting him, and a handful of people had contacted him about it. And from the start, I was committed. I was like, I'm doing this. This is gonna be awesome. And at first he didn't tell me what he was doing it for, and then a few days in, he says we're gonna raise money for Duchenne muscular dystrophy research. Well, I thought about it. We had a family friend pass away that past December from Duchenne, so it was really strange how that connection was there immediately. And then from there, it was just we looked back and it was like 70 days or something of planning for this whole
Hmm.
trip. Um, and we went and raised, I want to say, close to $100,000. And Michael was the one who did basically all of the fundraising. I was there riding with him, and it was really his trip. But we went and rode from Astoria, Oregon, and we rode east to the Mississippi, basically, and then we rode southeast to Mobile, Alabama.
Hmm.
So we technically didn't go, Pacific to Atlantic or to coast, as people would say, but we did 3,400 miles, which was, 600 or 700 more miles than if you had gone straight across. Um, so we raised money for the Hope for Gabe Foundation, which Gabe Griffin is a little boy in Alabama. He has Duchenne, and the foundation, it's his parents' foundation, but all of the money we raised was going towards research for the disease. But I want to say we had something over like 75 news stories between print and radio and television. We had all these stories about our trip, and then I mean we had different mayors. We had the governor of Alabama. They made proclamations that proclaimed Ride for Gabe Day. It was an incredible experience and something that I will never forget. Um, there's so many stories from that. But then that ride took us, because the Griffins are from Alabama, we decided it made the most sense to do a north-south tour of Alabama and end in Mobile. So when we were in Birmingham, I met a friend of Michael's. His name is Brian Toon, and we were talking. And I have a picture on my wall of us riding, and we were talking. He said, "I'm going to do Ram next year," and I said, "All right, I can tell you right now, I will take the 2 weeks. I will take the 2 weeks and be on your crew for Ram." And at first I didn't think he was serious, and the week or so after that we talked a little bit. We connected on Facebook or whatever. We chatted a little, and he said, "I'll talk to you once I qualify." And I said, "Okay." I hadn't really heard from him at all after those couple weeks. So come January of this year, I guess. January of this year, I'm in New York City, and I remember where I was. I was on the High Line, which is like, Chelsea area of Manhattan, and I get this random Facebook message from Brian that says, "Hey, we're Race Across America. We want you to go out to California for this crew seminar with us at the end of the month." And I immediately call him like, "Hey, what's up?" And he's saying, "Well, we want you to be the crew chief, and we want you to go to this crew chief seminar with us in Sacramento. We'll pay, we'll fly you out there, or whatever." So at that point, uh, funny enough, I had set up a internship with a beef jerky company called Perky Jerky. So in November, I had gotten this offer, and I said, "Yeah, I'll take the internship. I'll intern with you guys next summer." Brian reaches out to me in January, and I say, "Screw the internship. I'm gonna go do the Race Across America stuff." So until the race, I was spending hours each week doing just planning and kind of logistical stuff for his effort, just figuring out how everything was going to kind of come
Yeah,
together. And then there's Ram.
yeah. Just hearing your story, I mean, a couple of things that I find it I find it interesting that you and Brian weren't you weren't best friends. You hardly knew each other from what it sounds like, and yet he asked you to be crew chief. I think that's really cool how people can put their trust in others. You
Yeah.
must have saw something in you where like you biked across the country 3,400 miles, so you must have been determined to do that, and so he trusted you being crew chief. I think that's great.
Well, what I tell people is the reason I decided to put in so much effort for them is because I saw somebody out there chasing their dream, and that, like I've said before, there's so many people that couldn't go do that, that aren't able to do that, and this guy is so committed. He's one of the most committed people I've ever seen, uh, and he's out there just chasing the dream and like putting everything on the line for this. And I was like, how can I say no to helping him accomplish this, because it was something he had dreamt of since he was a kid. So for me, it was like it made so much sense. And then, from a resume perspective as well, it was like, well, I'm gonna be able to go put this out there, but when I look at it, it's like the resume doesn't really matter because somebody in the business school, for example, isn't going to understand race across America unless they're a cyclist. It gave me a lot of real world experience dealing with people and gave me a lot of cool stories to talk about. But at the end of the day, it was just a really, really cool thing to be a part of. And it was awesome to watch Brian chase his dream and, accomplish it, which was incredible.
Yeah, I wish that we had a chance to catch up to him, to catch up to you guys. We caught up to a few groups. I remember the first guy we caught was somewhere in the first solo guy was somewhere in, I want to say it was in Indiana, and we caught a few more guys as we got to Annapolis, but we never caught Brian, we never caught you guys. So he was definitely motoring, and I really enjoyed my first contact with Brian was in a race. It was the Rouge Roubaix near Baton Rouge in 2013, I want to say, and he was racing in like a Cat 2. I was racing Cat 3, and I just kind of shook hands with him, and it was crazy to know that, hey, this guy's doing Ram solo. Followed him on Strava, followed him on Instagram. So the fact that he was training stupid miles. I mean, just unbelievable miles. So he was
Yeah.
a powerhouse kind of guy, and me and a buddy, me and Dustin, that we did the Ram this year on a team of 4. We're thinking about doing a team of 2 at some point in our lives, and I definitely want to. If I ever crew chief, I want to get into Ram as the years go on, and possibly crew chief. So if I ever crew chief, I'll get in touch with you.
Yeah, it was one hell of an experience. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. Um, so I got a couple questions. I let the viewers of the Plant-Based Cyclist Facebook page know that I was interviewing. I kind of gave them your profile on who this person is, and I got a couple questions, if you don't mind addressing these, from my viewers. One of them asked, for your anxiety and depression, did you ever take any medications? How, if you did, how did you get off those medications? And then kind of how do you feel about pharmaceutical meds in general? If you can answer that. If you can't, that's fine.
Yeah, no, no. I am strongly against taking medication. For I've never taken any medication for anxiety, depression, um, and even when I broke my back, for example, I took the pain mills, the pain meds they prescribed me for one day, and they said this is awful. This is way worse than just being in pain. I won't do
Mm.
it. I mean, the strongest thing I'll take is ibuprofen, and that's the worst case scenario. And like, even when I was in the Dominican 2 weeks ago, um, was really against taking ibuprofen. I think there are uh, things that come from the earth that can help us um, more than pharmaceuticals. But on the other hand, there are drugs out there, for example, to help patients with Duchenne. And I'm 100% for a pharmaceutical that's going to help somebody come back from a disease where, for example, these boys don't produce this protein dystrophin. Okay, well, if there's a pharmaceutical, if there's a pill out there that's going to help them, change their lives, that's a different story than something that I feel you can deal with through just rehab or diet. And it's different because I know people have said, and this is something I'm not very familiar with, but like, depression is not just, okay, well, you're fat, so you're
Hmm.
depressed. There's more to it. But my personal opinion is I think there's when you start like just kind of embracing what comes from the earth, it just makes you feel so much
Mm.
better. And there's a lot that can be said about that. And like I said, I'm no expert, but my personal opinion is if I think there's a way that I can get something from the earth that's going to help me, I'm all for it. And that goes from just recovery from a workout um, to anything really. There's just a lot that there's so much that Earth gives us that I think that we can use. So I mean, for whoever asked that question, I probably, like I said, I never took those medications, but my suggestion would just be try something from the earth and see what that does for you, and just try to embrace the power of fruits and
Yeah.
vegetables.
Speaking about your friend who you did this ride for with Duchenne's, uh, it makes me think of a documentary I just watched on Netflix a couple days ago about medical marijuana. Are you pro medical marijuana?
I am I am definitely pro, and that's another subject I don't touch on that much, but it's something where it's like I've had plenty of. There's another family in Alabama who I've chatted with a bit, and this guy Dustin, his daughter has the CDKL5. It's a very rare disease. It's similar to like an epilepsy, where she was having hundreds of seizures a
Mm-hmm.
day, and they got it approved in Alabama for the university to start growing marijuana, so she could get CBD oil, which has been shown to I mean, basically it gets rid of the seizures. I've had people I've met in Colorado they've moved to Colorado. This guy I worked with, his son was having hundreds of seizures a day. They started taking the CBD oil and never had a
Mm-hmm.
seizure again. So that's something I can really believe in. All of the other treatments I'm not as familiar with, but I've had firsthand experience with friends of mine doing this that have it's actually it's been proven, it's been shown that it got rid of their seizures or whatever. So it's like it's hard to be against.
Yeah. Well, it's hard. It's hard from our perspective to be against that. But I just think watching this documentary, I can't think of the name of it, but there are so many forces at play. Imagine like there's us on one side pulling on this rope. We're playing a tug of war, and there's all these other factors on the other side trying to keep marijuana illegal. And it's a great documentary. And I'll if I find a name, I'll post it in the description below to those of you who are watching this. But yeah, I think eventually, like probably, I'd say next 30 years, it's going to be legal in probably all 50 states. That's my prediction. And I just want to touch on one more thing too, is that when I've broken my collarbone twice, cycling accidents, and I was given Vicodin to help with the pain, and I would take it for probably I was given like 2 weeks worth of Vicodin, and I would take one pill before I went to bed, and that would help knock me out for like the first 4 days. But kind of along the same lines as you, I didn't really like the way it made me feel. It definitely worked. It was very powerful. And I find it interesting that you listen to your body so well that you're like, man, you knew it was powerful. You didn't like the way it made you feel, but it's crazy. There are so many people who are addicted to that. Just just
Yeah,
take it. It's crazy how many people are addicted to prescription pain pills.
and that's the one thing. Like at this point in my life, I'm so in tune with my body, and I know like how certain things are gonna make me feel. It's crazy how all these forces are coming in on you, but I know what my body's gonna feel like based on what I put in it or what I do to it, and it's kind of a cool place to be
Yeah.
right now.
Um, I'm gonna give you. I don't know if you read this, but I'm gonna. The last question is from another viewer, and I'm not quite sure what she meant by it. So I'm gonna read you what I posted on my page to see if you can kind of get an idea for what she asked.
Okay.
So I said to my viewers, what would you ask? Interviewing a young man Friday who has struggled with weight and depression all of his life, he found an escape through sports and mental fortitude, educated himself on nutrition, and fell in love with cycling as he attended university. He biked across the country, jumped out of a plane, and almost jumped into a volcano. Stay tuned for the interview being posted next week. And this woman wrote, what scared him the most? I guess maybe having to do with perhaps your weight, perhaps your depression. What really terrified you the most?
Um, that that's a really good question. There there are a lot of things that I've been afraid of in my life, and if I'm going to answer that question today, the thing that terrifies me the most today is having any
Mm,
regrets and saying, I regret doing this. I wish I had done that. And that's my answer today. But the things that scared me the most in my past were that's really tough. There were times where I just felt really alone, and that was really scary, and just feeling isolated, and feeling like my situation was never going to get better, and this is a place I'm stuck in, and that there was really no escape. And I think that's what led to these moments where I was like, holy shit, like I might take my own life, and that and I think that's what happens with a lot of people. You think that you get to this place where you think there's no
mm,
escape, and that's probably what scared me the most. But then getting to a point like that is definitely terrifying, and realizing you're at that point, and then just and then when you get to the point of jumping out of an airplane or whatever, that doesn't scare you at all, because you're like, well, I've been through a lot
mm-hmm,
worse. You look at the statistics, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna be
mm-hmm,
fine. Like, there are other things that I think my uh, diet was way more
mm-hmm.
dangerous than jumping out of an
Mm-hmm.
airplane. If you look at it
Right.
that way, you know what I mean. So I'm like, uh, that after all I'd been through, that wasn't that
Yeah.
scary.
Yeah.
So
I completely agree with that. Yeah. I just think I think this has been a great. We're kind of reaching the end here. So, and I'm going to give you one last word, but I kind of want to close by saying I've learned a lot reading your 8 to 10 page memoir, and I think people who are watching this, we can all learn something from the stories you just told in terms of, like you just said, living your lives with no regrets. I think that's something that even I am working on. I think what I find interesting about you too, is you're a doer instead of just talking. You come up with these ideas like riding across the country, doing the race across America with Brian, and let's say losing the weight, trying to conquer your depression, your depression. You do things. You're not just a talker, and I think that's the world needs more people like that. And I think lastly, anybody who's watching this, I find that your story is particularly, or will be particularly inspirational to those young people out there, young or old, who are suffering with depression. I can't say that depression has affected my life, directly with me or indirectly with a family member, but I know how much it affects other people and other families. So, um, I know how much I can only begin to imagine how much it would have affected your family if you would have jumped into that volcano. So I guess, let me just ask a final question, and then you can kind of take it where you want. But I guess that what would you like to end with? And if you can sort of address, if someone's watching this who is depressed, what would you recommend for that person?
I mean, my what I always tell people is just find something that you can really get passionate about, and that is worth waking up every day
Hmm.
for. You know, and it's not easy. It's not easy to just say, "Oh, I'm going to go do this. This is what I want to do." But if you can try a variety of different things and try to just get outdoors and see different places, have different experiences, and figure out what makes you happy. There are times when I'm backpacking, for example, and I get to these remote places where I know that there's nobody within miles of me, and I'm still like, wow, this is amazing. Like, people have seen it before. I know there are people that have been there, but it's just phenomenal knowing that I made it there and that it exists. And those moments are what kind of keep me going because it's like I don't. Though I mean, those are just it's so worth it. Like getting to that place and being just so present. Uh, and then, so if you can find that spot, and it doesn't have to be hiking, for example. You don't have to be out in the back country and find that. But if you can find something where you're like, damn, I'm really glad that I'm here right now and that this moment is so cool. I think that that could help a lot of people and realize and looking at how grateful you are and how lucky you are and just being grateful
Hmm.
for it. And you don't have to compare yourself to
Hmm.
somebody else, but looking and saying, I'm able to go walk outside a mile today. I know dozens of people that can't
Hmm.
do that. Going saying, I'm able to go buy fresh fruits and vegetables and cook up a delicious meal. I know there are millions of people that can't do that, and that's even in our own country that don't have access to those simple
Hmm.
things. So I think it's just about being grateful for what you have, and looking at it just in a positive light and saying, "I'm glad I'm here today. Let's figure out what's going to make me want to be here tomorrow, and continue to be
Yeah.
here."
And I just to add to that, I think the passion that you speak of doesn't necessarily have to be something having to do with athletics. It could be a passion about anything really. I mean, if it makes you happy, I would say do it more. And also is we can't. I don't want to um, de-emphasize or really go without mentioning professional. There's professional help out there for people who are really depressed, and so I
Exactly.
think people
Yeah.
need to, if they're at a point where they're contemplating suicide or anything like that, any self harm, seek out someone who you trust, and you need to tell them, and you need to talk to them and say I need help. Reach out to people who you trust and say there's nothing wrong with saying I need help, and you will get the help you need.
Yeah, I completely agree. And just find that balance in your life where you're try to get to a place where you're just surrounded by positivity and everything you do just makes you feel good about what you're
Yeah,
doing. Just makes you it makes you
yeah,
happy. And it's not easy to find that, but you have to go
yeah.
try.
Well, this has really been fun. I hope that if anybody does watch this who has struggled with their weight, is struggling with their health, either physical health or mental health, I hope that if we can reach one person and help them, then we've done our job. And
Yeah,
I hope
exactly.
that we reach more.
And if anybody sees this, feel free to reach out to me. I'm always available. And that's one of my goals in life is to impact as many people as possible, and just through my work, find people that need help and get the right help for those people. So if there's anybody out there that needs anything or is interested in my story, any more details that we didn't touch on, feel free to email me or reach out to me on Facebook. I'm always
Sounds
available.
good. And again, I'll put Wes's email address in the description of the movie when I post it on YouTube. Wes, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you, Ian.